A simple grocery run ended with me in the hospital when my trauma decided to make a guest appearance. Here's some context. I grew up in a nightmare. For 23 years, I dealt with daily abuse, screaming, hitting, gaslighting, emotional blackmail. My parents convinced me I was worthless. It took me nearly 2.5 decades to save money and build courage to escape. I moved to a town about 2 hours away by train, just a small apartment and a quiet job as an office assistant. The physical distance helped, but the mental baggage followed. I started therapy to rebuild myself. Those first couple years of therapy were rough. I functioned on the outside, but inside, I was shattered. The diagnosis came: complex PTSD, depression, anxiety, and other prizes for surviving childhood. My colleagues were understanding. I didn't have to worry about losing my job. The incident happened about 10 months after I moved. One Saturday, I had a brutal crying episode. When it ended, I went to my fridge to find it empty except for a single pickle in a jar. I needed groceries unless I wanted to live on crackers and pickle water. I wasn't ready to be around people, but I'd put off shopping too long. I got dressed, brushed my teeth and hair, grabbed my shopping basket, and went to the nearest supermarket. It was the same chain I worked at back in my hometown. Walking into the store, I was shaking and anxious, trying not to draw attention. I grabbed produce, milk, ham, cheese, yogurt. I was almost done. Just needed sugar, pasta, and ketchup before I could get to checkout. That's when someone tapped my shoulder and my system went into shutdown. I turned around to see an angry woman who reminded me of my mother. She was tapping her foot on the floor. I stuttered, asking if I could help her. She told me she'd been trying to get my attention for 3 minutes and wanted to know where the coffee on sale was. It took me a moment to process through the mental fog. I stammered that I didn't know and mentioned I didn't drink coffee. She got more agitated, shouting at me. She yelled that she hadn't asked me to drink the coffee but wanted to know where she could buy it, calling me a dimwit. She was screaming at me. I backed away, and then everything went blank. The next thing I knew, I was looking at a hospital ceiling with pain at the back of my head. A nurse was leaning over me. The nurse asked how I was feeling. Confused, I asked what day it was, what time, and what happened. She told me it was Sunday evening, 8 p.m., and I had hit a shelf hard. I fell back asleep because I was incapable of thinking straight. On Monday, my therapist visited and helped me call work since I wasn't going for a few days. 2 police officers came for my statement and asked if I wanted to press charges, which surprised me. Me suing someone? For what? After I backed away from the woman, I shut down and begged her not to hurt me, while she kept screaming and moving closer. When I couldn't back up further, she grabbed my shirt and yanked me toward her to scream in my face. I pushed her away with all my strength. She lost her balance, let go of my shirt, and we both fell. She landed on the floor, bruising her butt, while I hit the shelf head first. The security guard and an employee arrived just in time to see us fall. The security guy helped the woman, who was screaming that she wanted me fired for being rude. I was on the floor, hands around my bleeding head, crying and promising I would be good if she would stop hurting me. Police and paramedics came. The officers took the woman away after seeing the security footage, while paramedics took me to the hospital with a brain concussion. The woman was from my hometown and had seen me working at the supermarket there. When she was in my new town, she thought I worked at that store too. She knew my mother, who likely told her I was worthless. That's my theory. I don't know of any other interaction between us. After talking with my therapist, I pressed charges. The woman was charged with assault, destroying property, and something else I can't remember. She went to jail for 2 years since I had a head injury, and my lawyer emphasized my mental health state. I didn't go to that supermarket for at least a year. I bought a new shopping basket and went elsewhere. When I returned, I met the employee who saw the incident. They told me details the police and doctors left out, like how I was crying and begging on the floor. I've had more encounters with entitled people since then, but I was in a better place mentally and never broke down in public again. I was a sophomore in high school, barely 5'4", and hadn't hit my growth spurt yet. Being short made me an easy target for jokes. It didn't matter that I was a star player on both the soccer and baseball teams. Kids still found ways to make themselves feel better by putting me down. My drafting teacher was the worst. He took special pleasure in making height jokes at my expense, especially in front of the entire class. At first, everyone would laugh, but eventually, even my friends realized how much it bothered me and stopped encouraging him. The class became unbearable. I couldn't focus on learning because I was always anxious about when the next joke would come. After weeks of this, I decided to talk to him privately after class. I nervously approached him after everyone left and asked if I could speak with him for a minute. He told me to make it quick. I explained my situation, saying I was hoping he could stop making jokes about my height because it was embarrassing and making it hard for me to concentrate in class. He told me to stop being a coward and ordered me out of his room. I never forgot that moment. A few weeks later, I brought my newly acquired learner's permit to school. I was showing it to a friend before class when the teacher walked by. He loudly told the entire class that they must be giving licenses to 10-year-olds now. The class went quiet. He grabbed a stack of 4 encyclopedia books and shoved them toward me, suggesting that I could have them in case I needed to sit on them while driving. Something inside me snapped. Everyone at school knew he was going through a divorce. His wife had been cheating on him with another teacher at our school, Mr. Johnson. It was the day before Valentine's Day, and I happened to have a rose I'd bought to give to my crush. I held up the rose and looked him straight in the eyes. I asked him if he would like the rose to try and get his wife to love him again, or if I should just give it to Mr. Johnson to give to her instead. The room went silent. He exploded, screaming and throwing things around the classroom. Teachers from across the hall came to see what was happening. When he finally paused, I spoke up again. I told him that he should take his own advice and stop being a P-word. For a second, I thought he might attack me, and I braced myself. Instead, he walked out of the classroom and left the school. When Monday came around, I walked into class expecting detention or at least an awkward atmosphere. Instead, there was an older man at the teacher's desk. He said he was our regular teacher's father and that his son had been checked into a mental health facility. At first, I felt terrible. Had I pushed him over the edge? But then I remembered all the humiliation he'd put me through when all I'd done was ask him to stop. He had chances to change his behavior but chose to make it worse. I stopped feeling bad after that. This confrontation changed something in me. I learned that standing up for myself could accomplish something. I didn't have to just take whatever was dished out to me. 5 years later, I'd grown into my full 5'11", 200-pound frame. I was shopping at a local store when I saw him. He didn't recognize me at first, but when he did, he approached me. He said he needed to talk to me. I agreed to listen. He apologized for how he had treated me in school, admitting he had been a jerk and had been taking all his frustrations out on me. He explained that he was an Army veteran and had been struggling with his mental health. After our confrontation, he told someone that he'd had thoughts about harming himself and even harming me. That led to him being sent to a Veterans Affairs mental health facility. He thanked me, saying that because of what happened, he got the help he needed. He explained that the divorce and everything else had put him in a dark place. I told him I was glad he got help. I just wanted the harassment to stop. But in the end, I got my revenge and he got the help he needed. I remember it like yesterday, even though we're talking early 80s here. Video arcades were booming back then. Pac-Man, Donkey Kong, Space Invaders. Everyone wanted a piece of that action. My cousin and I were stuck in dead-end jobs, barely making ends meet when we had this idea. Why not open our own arcade? We scraped together every penny we had, got a small loan, and found this old building we could afford to rent. The place needed work. We spent weeks repainting, replacing lights, getting proper signage made, all the things that drain your wallet before you make a single dollar. By opening day, we were broke. If this didn't work, we were done. The first few weeks were good. We had decent traffic, mostly kids and teenagers coming in after school and weekends. The quarters were adding up, and we started to think maybe this idea would work after all. Then he showed up, the local tough guy. Everyone in town knew him, the kind of guy who peaked in high school and made sure everyone knew it. He rolled in with his little gang of followers, and the whole vibe of our arcade changed. Kids would leave when they saw him coming. He'd hog machines without paying, intimidate the younger customers, that sort of thing. My cousin and I talked about banning him, but we were worried about payback. This guy had a reputation for vandalizing places that crossed him, so we just tried to manage the situation, keeping an eye on him when he was there. Then came the day he decided to show who was boss. He got mad after losing at some game and punched a hole in our wall. Just put his fist through the sheetrock. I shouted at him, asking what he thought he was doing. I was furious. This was our place. We'd put everything into it. I was ready to fight right then, even though he had his 3 buddies with him. But my cousin laughed, which confused everyone, including me. My cousin told the tough guy he was strong and bet him $5 that he couldn't do it again right next to the hole. The guy looked suspicious for a second, then smirked. The tough guy said it would be easy money for him. Bam! Another hole in our wall. My cousin pulled out a $5 bill and handed it over. I was looking at him like he'd lost his mind. My cousin then challenged him to a double or nothing bet that he couldn't do it again. Bam! A third hole. Another $5 handed over. My cousin proposed one more bet, same amount, pointing to a spot about a foot to the right of the last hole. The guy was cocky now, $10 richer, and loving the attention from his friends and the other customers watching. The tough guy told everyone to watch his next move. What the bully did in tow, and what my clever cousin did, was that this old building had terrible sheetrock walls that were like paper, but behind that sheetrock were rough-sawn hardwood studs, wood that had been drying and hardening for about 50 years into something nearly as tough as steel, and my cousin had just directed him to punch directly into one of those studs. The sound wasn't sheetrock breaking this time, it was bones. The crack was sickening. The tough guy's face went white. Tears sprang to his eyes. He clutched his shattered hand to his chest and backed away. Without a word to his friends, he turned and ran out the door. About a week later, I ran into him at the convenience store. His hand was in this metal contraption with pins through his fingers and the back of his hand, the whole thing strapped to his chest. I asked him how he'd spend the $10 he won from us. He responded with curses and vague threats about how I would get mine someday. I smiled and walked away. But the story doesn't end there. We found out he'd been telling people his hand got caught in a door at some local business and was threatening to sue them for his medical bills. When my cousin heard about this, he went to that business and told them exactly what happened. The business owner did some asking around, and a couple of the tough guy's friends confirmed our story. He ended up having to pay his own medical bills and almost got charged with insurance fraud. Then he tried to come after us, saying our unsafe building caused his injury. The insurance company lawyer told him that not only was it not an accident, but since he damaged our property, we could countersue him for the repairs. He backed down quick. About 2 years later, he got into a bar fight and lost several teeth. True to form, he tried to claim it happened at his workplace to get them to cover dental work. Someone tipped off his employer and he got fired. Found out years later it was my cousin who made that call too. Just last week, over 40 years later, I saw him at the grocery store. I'm in my 60s now and he's not looking great. He was complaining to the cashier about the arthritis in his hand and talking with a lisp from his still missing teeth. He was going on about how he got screwed out of disability for a workplace injury, but proudly saying he screwed the hospital out of the bill. The funny thing is, he didn't recognize me as the co-owner of that arcade who was standing just a few feet away when he demolished his own hand. He has no idea I know the truth. That wall cost us about $200 to repair, money we couldn't spare at the time. Well, $210 if you count the $10 my cousin paid him in bully bets. But watching that same bully shuffling around town 40 years later, still dealing with what he did, somehow, that makes it worth it. A few years ago, when I was 18, my family dynamic changed when some of my cousins moved in with us. It was me, my 15-year-old sister, my mom, and my stepdad in our house, and then we had these new housemates. The reason? One of my cousins, I'll call him Ick, he was 16 at the time, had become too much for his dad's girlfriend to handle. She gave up on him, so he came to live with us along with his siblings. From day one, Ick was a nightmare to live with. He tried to assert dominance over me and my sister, picking fights for no reason and trying to act tough. Neither of us was intimidated by him, which only made him try harder. The breaking point came when Ick decided to make noodles one day. Somehow he managed to burn my school textbook. In the process, I'd left the book near the stove, not on it, but how do you burn a textbook while making noodles? My mom made me pay for the replacement out of my own money. I was furious. This guy comes into our home, makes our lives miserable, destroys my property, and I have to pay for it. For about a week, I planned some revenge. During this time, I noticed that Ick hadn't showered in at least 2 weeks. It was disgusting. You could tell which rooms he'd been in just by the smell. That's when I had my idea. I grabbed one of the bigger green peppers from our kitchen, cut it open, and rubbed some of the juices on his underwear. I put it on top of his clean underwear pile, figuring he'd grab that pair next. And then I forgot all about it for over a week, until one morning I woke up to screaming. Loud, pained screaming. At first I tried to ignore it because Ick was always causing drama, but his crying became so annoying that I got up to see what was happening. I found my mom trying to figure out why Ick was saying his private parts were burning. She thought it was a urinary tract infection, which made sense considering his hygiene habits. I suggested to Ick that he should try taking a shower. He told me in not nice terms to go away. I just shrugged and started eating my cereal while my mom got ready to take him to the doctor. It wasn't until after they left and I was sitting in class that I remembered what I had done with the pepper. Oh crap. I started feeling bad about it. When I got home later that day, Ick was curled up in a ball on the couch, still sobbing. Now I felt guilty. I tried again to convince him to shower and change his clothes, telling him it might help with the burning. He screamed at me to leave him alone. So I did. I left him alone to deal with both my revenge and his own terrible hygiene. The next day my mom pulled me aside looking tired. She told me that the doctor couldn't find any infection and said it was simple irritation. She said the doctor told Ick to shower regularly and change his underwear daily. I nodded, trying to look concerned while fighting back a smile. My mom said she didn't understand why he wouldn't shower. I said maybe this would finally convince him. And it did. After a few more hours of suffering, Ick finally took what was probably the longest shower of his life. After that, his showering habits improved. Not perfect, but better than before. He never found out what I did, and I never told anyone. My mom thought that the doctor's lecture had gotten through to him. My sister noticed the change in his behavior and gave me a suspicious look. My sister commented on how Ick was much less smelly lately and asked if something had happened. I said he must have finally realized basic hygiene is important if you don't want your private parts to feel like they're on fire. Did I feel bad about causing him that much pain? Yes. Would I do it again? Probably not. But it solved more problems than it created. He never burned any more of my belongings, and the house smelled better.